We are officially live here on KRFF 95.9 LPFM. This is One Pretty Ricky. I have my co-host Kirsten Huovinen here in the studio, and then Adam Martin is joining us live from Florida. Adam, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is crazy. I'm using a phone to talk into. I'm using another phone to Facebook Live into, and I'm using my computer so I can see you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous. Yeah,
I think we need to spend some more time on this.
Well, I think that's part of the fun, right? Just always figuring things out, making it work.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in on our Facebook Live and those who are tuning in on the radio. This is KRFF 95.9 LPFM. It's F5 Recovery Radio, sponsored by the F5 Project and The Ridge. So we're super happy that we're able to do this show and be able to kind of just share about, all things recovery. And so today's show, because we're starting a little late, we're going to just jump right in and talk about anger management. So, and it's funny that Kirsten always, I come up with the topics, Kirsten writes the notes, and then Adam just wings it. And so we were, before the show, she was going through her notes. And you had a lot of notes.
I know, because we've done this. We're going to do this twice now. And both times Adam's like, oops, I'm not going to be there. Which I don't know if he's avoiding the anger management topic altogether or I'm not sure. But anyway, I must have been just hot the day I wrote these notes because in looking back on some of the things I jotted down, holy smokes, I have a book going on in here. Must have been a bad day for Matt.
Yeah.
Oh man, so can the internet hear me? Can Facebook hear me then?
I can hear you in my headphones.
Yeah, that's the radio I call from Facebook. But I don't know if they can hear me.
Turn this volume up.
So how's Florida?
Actually, they probably can, Ricky, because I'm on my side. Or no, I'm not on my side.
We're still trying to figure out the boys are trying to figure out. I gave a simple solution. They were like, no, that can't possibly work. And that's what we'll go back to, I'm quite sure. So for the record, I was right. Not that I need a record, but I do keep score. Typically, I have a Rolodex of resentments.
So his FaceTime's coming through, but we can't hear him.
I can hear him. I can't hear him
but not through the FaceTime. So the
Oh.
FaceTime would normally be communicating to that microphone, but it's not like.
Do you need to turn him up on my phone?
Yeah, I was pushing the volume, but
Well, that's because your FaceTime is communicating through the phone.
He said
The audio is going through the phone.
He said it's because you don't know what you're doing.
the weirdest FaceTime ever.
Anyway, so how's Florida, Adam?
Good. Tell Ricky that the FaceTime audio is going through the phone. Going through the radio phone.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but anger management's probably shouldn't have been the topic today because I'm going to be so mad. I'm mad that I sound like a man today. But anyway, well, in lieu of technical difficulties, we'll march on.
Yeah. Ricky.
Yeah.
Can Kirsten hear me?
Yeah, I can.
We can hear you through the
Okay.
hear you through the radio, but we can't hear you through the Facebook. Like the FaceTime for whatever reason.
Yeah, so the FaceTime audio is going through the phone. The radio phone.
I don't know what you said.
Yeah. How is that possible?
Because oh, no, you're right. No, I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah. I'm like,
Here we go.
It's just a normal FaceTime.
All right.
But
Yeah, forget it.
no, can't hear Adam. God, that's whack. All right, what if we let me re-FaceTime you, see if that works.
Well, while they're doing that, I'll share my pearls of wisdom on anger management.
There we go.
Because I got a notebook here to share with you. I think the thing I was most concerned that wouldn't get covered is how anger is different between men and women, and how.
So I figured out what the problem was.
What is it, Adam?
The problem is that my AirPods were still connected to FaceTime.
Okay, so it was you all along.
Yeah, so you should be able to hear me on FaceTime now, correct?
Okay.
Oh, it just hung up.
I'll FaceTime you real quick.
All right.
We apologize for the inconvenience and having to listen to us natter on about technology.
So now I'm FaceTiming you.
And I'm not sure that I ever told the Krabby's a Choice story. I probably did, but I'm going to tell it again.
Yeah.
My husband, when we had little kids anyway, and one of the things of having an addiction of any kind is like this emotional roller coaster that you live on. And I just woke up in a mood, and I was upset for no particular reason, mostly just that my husband snores and was still breathing and all of those things. So anyway, he was in the shower being all cute, like he got out, had his little towel on. And I was going to leave for work, and I was just mad. I was mad at everything. So I was going to slam the door on my way out, and he said, "Hey." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Krabby's a choice." And just as I was slamming the door, I was like, "So is homicide, USOB." And then as I got to my car, it just dawned on me that, yes, in fact, Krabby is a choice. I do choose how my day goes. And some days I don't pick to be serene and spiritual and guided by the light. Some days I just pick to be Krabby until it makes me miserable enough that I don't want to do that anymore.
That's fair. But I feel like, I don't know, like sometimes I realize with Krabby being a choice, and then but like you can choose to not be Krabby, you can choose to be Krabby, and you can definitely choose to stay in it. But like sometimes even when like all signs are pointing to me changing, like, okay, if you just stop doing this, whatever the situation is, this will get better. Sometimes I don't want it to get better. Sometimes I want to like stay mad, or I want to stay Krabby, I want to stay in my, stuff, right? And like until eventually, then I'll like decide to like do something different. And so I don't know. It's such a different like perspective of like sometimes it's like, yep, you're right, Matt. Krabby is a choice, but I'm still choosing this, even though I know this would be so much better if I just chose something
absolutely, absolutely. And there's many times where I've chose Krabby, more than Krabby, in fact. I think when he bought the third truck that I didn't know about, I chose to be more than Krabby. And I wanted to burn all of his stuff in the yard and then just sit there and wait to get arrested, because it would have been worth it to me. But I decided we should probably talk about these things. Okay, I didn't decide that. I decided my decision was to burn all his things in his new truck. But having sponsorship or having mentors in life, or just anybody to say like, maybe you could work through this, But my anger doesn't come out in one flash. It's not like I'm so mad and I throw things or whatever. It's like seething, and it leaks out into guilt trips and self-pity and like the poor me's. And really, it's just so many things I'm not saying. Like, I'm not saying that I'm disappointed. I'm not saying that I don't feel heard. I'm not saying that I'm overwhelmed. You just swallow that stuff down. I'm not saying the things you feel super guilty about as a parent, that like, I want my time back. I feel so selfish and guilty that I want somebody else to take care of my kids for the day. You know what I mean? All of these things that you think I can't say that because that would make me a horrible mom. But I've tried doing that both ways, and it turns out what made me a horrible mom was not taking care of myself and not saying those things. And then I am short with my kids, and then I'm in tears because I'm short with my kids, and then they're like, what is going on? And I think the worst thing like one of the worst things I've ever said to my kids was, "You make me so mad." And it was just, because it taught them that, like, I can't control my emotions. Their behavior changes my behavior. And when in actuality, their behavior has nothing to do with my choices as far as my emotions go. And it takes all the power away from them later in life to be able to say, like, I'm in control of my emotions. Otherwise, they're like, this whole situation makes me so mad. I can't help myself. I just have to act like this. Well, that's not even reality, you know?
Right.
Anyway, so try to keep them empowered with that kind of stuff and just to teach emotional maturity, which is difficult on a good day.
Yeah, that's real. What about for you, Adam?
Well, I had to press. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now? Because I have both microphones on. Is anything echoing?
Nope.
Okay, so as long as you guys don't talk while I'm talking, it should not create a loop of any kind.
Okay.
Okay. So no talking. That is direct. I'm just. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I'm in Florida right now. I'm on like a canal type thing. There's a bunch of boats out here. It's sunny. It's 85 degrees, and I still got pissed off as we were going through this, trying to figure out the audios and the speakers and the loops and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't. Here's the thing. I've never believed that anger management has anything to do with environment. You can have everything you've ever wanted in your life. You could have all the blessings you've ever wanted. You could be in a homeless shelter and have nothing, right? And I've seen people who are happier on both sides of those lines, right? It all comes down to, what am I willing to do to be happy? And not, Jeff always asks, he's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And I'm like, Jeff, I want to be both. So there's things that I got to do, whether it's at home or at work or whatever. But I think a lot of times for me, anger management comes down to just time. I just need time. I need to be able to get away from whatever it is that's causing or triggering something inside me. And so I need to separate myself from that for just a little bit so I can cool off and get out of this like ego stress response thing that I got going on. And then I need to figure out what it was that triggered me about that event that made me angry and fix that, right? Not the thing, but me. And so that's a long process. And so I got angry. I couldn't separate myself from this, right? I still had a responsibility. And so it's not like, all right, Ricky, Kirsten, this thing sucks. I'm pissed off. I'm going to separate myself and then just leave people. It's like there's still times you have to like press on and do the right thing. So, I don't know. There's no easy answer for anger management. For me, it's just been like continuously showing up, making the right decision in the heat of the moment, and processing, what it is that's creating that event inside me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that at the very end you said there's no easy process. And I think of the questions and of all the things that I wanted to kind of have us like tackle today, that was going to be one of the first ones. Like, in your recovery, has anger management got easier? And so, Adam, you kind of answered that. Like, well, I mean, maybe not necessarily in recovery, but just in life, has it gotten easier? I know it's not easy, but has it gotten easier for you?
Well, let me be clear. I've been more angry in recovery than I have when I was still drinking. Because I didn't, by default, a lot of the things that would make me angry when I was still drinking were taken away from me, right? So I didn't, it was easy not to get mad at my kids when I was a drunk mess because I didn't have my kids. You know what I mean? I spent more time being depressed and maybe angry at myself, but I'm not going to, how many times do we actually yell at ourselves? You know what I mean? How many times do we actually, we're hard on ourselves, and so, I never, in all the times that I was drinking, I got in stupid fights with guys and, or whatever, but it wasn't out of anger. It was just out of being drunk and being dumb. Most of the times I put a hole in the drywall, right? If I was angry and I punched the wall, never involved drinking. If something happens to me when I don't drink, right? I become restless, I become irritable, I become discontent, things don't line up, I compare the way I feel with the way that people look, I get cut off in traffic, I get these responsibilities back and they're not going the way that I want them to go. I don't feel like I'm the dad that I'm supposed to be. None of those things happen when I'm drinking because I completely detach from reality for the most part. So most of the anger management is learned on the fly after you get sober. So does it get better? Yeah, I'm getting better at it since day one now that I'm coming up on 10 years. But am I perfect at it? No, because I've only been practicing it for 10 years. You know what I mean? This hasn't been a lifelong thing. So.
Right. Which I think from that perspective of the 5 years in recovery compared to the 30 plus years of non, right? I wasn't always, well, you can argue a lot of different ways if you were always addicted, but just in the amount of time frame, until I'm I have more years of recovery than I do non-recovery, I think maybe it gets easier. Maybe at that point, then I'll kind of figure things out a little bit better or manage it a little bit better. But then on the same time, as much as I thought I managed my anger better when it was just me and Jelsa, now we have a kid. So now it's okay, now it's navigating fatherhood and that dynamic, and that's completely new. And so then, a couple of years from now, who knows, as things will change, life will still get different. It won't be the same. And so it's right. I think that's one of the things that I'm grateful for in my recovery is that I'm learning that as soon as you think you got it, as soon as you think you really got a good handle on it, something will happen. And then all of a sudden, then you're whoop, I thought wrong, and then you have to navigate this new thing again.
Absolutely, yeah. I like what Adam said about anger in recovery versus while you're in your addiction. I think that it's in my addiction, I always knew I had a release. There was I'm going to get to drink today, or I'm going to get to do whatever, and I'm going to feel better. And like he said, the things that made me upset, I had zero control over, sometimes because you're in handcuffs, sometimes because, just situations happen. But it's easy to get overwhelmed in early recovery. It's easy to, because your brain's not healed yet in early recovery. I mean, you just there's so many emotions that happen. And one of the worst parts about addiction is that I cannot see my life clearly. I can't. That's why it's so important that I have someone I can talk to, like a sponsor, other people in recovery. And I trust their judgment. I trust that, when I call my sponsor to complain about my husband's horrible behavior, all the things he's done terribly wrong, and he says, well, it sounds to me like you're the problem. And maybe if you just act nice to him, then he'll act nice to you. Basic things like that. I be his biggest fan. My husband, when we first got married, he has this thing about overheating. If he gets too warm, the wrath has arrived. Everybody's going to suffer because if he's too warm, that was his excuse to be a jerk, to just be now we're all walking on eggshells because Matt needs an air conditioner. You know what I mean? And I hate air conditioning. But so, and I think it took me years to have enough courage to even say, I think that you're behaving poorly when you don't, when you're hot. I get why you're upset, but you can't treat anybody poorly just because you're having a moment, Mm-hmm. And it's just such a learning process, learning how to say what I actually need instead of doing the pity, like, poor me, everything is so hard for me, if everybody wasn't stressing me out, if you only knew my story, blah, blah, blah. And the more I get out of myself and help other people, the more I am focused on something other than my own feelings, things get better. And I'm sure that I have an unhealthy reaction to conflict, but mine is just to, like, I'm either going to tell an inappropriate joke or I'm just going to slide out. I avoid conflict at all costs, and that hasn't, it's helped me. I think it's helped me because I haven't had to deal with it. But then I haven't had to deal with it, and I'm not learning how to allow people their frustration without swooping in to fix it, so that I feel more comfortable, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the greatest books I read in my early 20s was The Four Agreements. And it really was like, for whatever reason at that time in my life, it just set me free. It just was like, and I think the Four Agreements, now I'm gonna go with my memory. It's not even in my notes. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personal. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And those are huge. Those things wreck my day all the time. Like Adam was saying, I assume I know what everybody's thinking, and it's never like, oh my gosh, Kirsten's awesome, she's got it together. I never think people are thinking that. I'm sure that they're mad about something. I've disappointed them somehow. I assume that if you say hi to Adam and you don't say hi to me, that you're mad at me and I have to fix that somehow. It's so much work, you know? So what about you, Ricky?
I think, so you guys kind of brought up a really interesting point, and then I appreciate that Amy had mentioned, like, so she was talking about one of our Facebook Live listeners who's stepped in. She said, I get angry sometimes, but sober, I feel like I'm able to step away and get my stuff together before I get really angry. And so I think one thing that I've learned in my anger management is a lot of just communication management, if you will, is communicating like, hey, sometimes being able to say, hey, I need to, you know what, we need to take a break. Why, if we're getting loud, if we're, levels are raising in our voices, like, okay, let's just take a break, pause, come back to this. Sometimes I don't say anything. Sometimes I just need to just step away because the next thing I say will be something hurtful or, and so I think a lot of that and just understanding in my anger management is just like, okay, what is my best response right now that I don't want to do because when I'm angry, I want to, lash out. I want to say whatever I'm feeling, but it's like, okay, what's the next thing I should do? Okay, you know what? I need to take a break. I need to step away. I need to do something else and come back to it and then try again. Yeah. And I think what I've learned definitely in recovery is that, like, when you're taking that pause, when you're taking that step back, or when you're, to manage that anger, it's like, okay, once things have subsided, then it's the come back to. Like, there was still an issue. There was still something that made me angry, whether I was justified in it or not, because I'd like to think I'm always justified. Whenever I'm angry, it's something that's,
you probably are, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, well, if I never come back and talk about it, if I never explain why, I was upset about whatever it is, either I'm not going to feel, it's going to come up again inevitably, and then we're going to probably get even louder the second or third or fourth, whatever time it is, or, like, to your point, with bringing up to Matt, like, sometimes I'm so angry, even when I'm calmed down, I still can't see where I was in the wrong when I was angry. Yeah. And I need my partner, or I need my sponsor, or I need my, whoever person to be able to say, hey, call me out, say, you know what, like, I understand you that this is what your response, but that wasn't a correct response to this because da-da-da-da-da, or whatever the thing might be. And I think being able to, like, be open to listening at that point, because when I'm angry, you can talk all day, you can tell me all the different things, but I'm not going to hear you because I don't want to. I'm upset, but it's coming back to it and being able to say, hey, okay, I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to, like, really see. I'm really ready to hear now.
And the rule of thumb is like, as soon as somebody's voice raises in a conversation, it's not about understanding each other anymore. Now it's just about winning, like Adam said. But when my husband says to me, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? I'm going to tell you that does rub me a little bit wrong because it assumes that he's right and I'm crazy. Like I'm just off on this tangent and he's like, well, crazy people don't know they're crazy, so I can't, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so then that makes me even more mad.
I feel like Matt and I probably, I know for a fact we get along well. I mean, you could make the argument that do you want to be right or do you want to be happy I'm probably going to lose a lot of friends on this one, is a form of gaslighting. It is a form of gaslighting. So it's just, like I know Matt and I know the people that, like at least the people on my network that say it, like they're doing it more for them, right? Because they want to end the argument. They want to just everyone to be happy, right? But a narcissist saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy, saying that to you, you could make the argument that they're saying that you're crazy. You know what I mean? Like, just be happy. Just be happy with what you got. Like you have all of this. But anyway, here's where I'm at with it. Like I get angry quite a bit when I drive. I get angry quite a bit, as especially in the past with F5, right? Like being, the guy who essentially, if something doesn't go right in the organization, right? Or if there's bad optics, or if there's something goes, something bad happens and we need to respond, whatever, right? I mean, people are people and stuff's going to happen, right? Like it's name one organization that's never had issues and I'll tell you that person should be the president of the United States because it's impossible. And so I used to get angry about all the stuff that I was trying to control, right? And then as I was hiring people, right, and delegating, I would get mad because they didn't do it the way that I wanted it to be done. It wasn't necessarily wrong, right? But I had to say to myself, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Do I want to control or do I want it to work, right? Do I want to just take all the glory in everything everyone does because I gave them the benefit of having a job, right? Or do people really, I wouldn't be able to do this without them? You know what I mean? Like, there's just a different way to look at it. And I've met some people who run, organizations and multiple companies, and they are some of the most happy people I've ever met, and they have hundreds of people that are working for them. And then I've met some people who have 2 people that work for them, and they're the most angry person I've ever met in my life, right? Why is that even a thing? It should be flipped, right? There's more responsibilities, more opportunities to be angry. I think you just get to a point where it's just stuff's going to happen, and when stuff's going to happen, and I can either respond to it with grace and know that, in the last 6-7 years since F5 has existed and everything that we've gone through, we're still here, no matter how I responded to it. And so if it doesn't matter necessarily how I respond to it, or it kind of matters if I respond negatively to it, but it always works out, then why am I spending my time trying to control everything, get angry, and trying to manipulate some kind of outcome that the outcome's going to happen regardless of what I do anyway? Why not just be happy? And so that's kind of where I got to, is that, I just got burnt out because I was trying to control everything. And so now I kind of went the other direction. I was like, I'm just not going to control anything and just let everybody do what they think is right. And then that wasn't good either. You have to find a balance in there where it's I don't have control, but I can put in effort.
And so anger, most anger goes back to fear. What are you, I fear things not working out. I fear it not going my way. And then I get manipulative and controlling, and anger is a form of manipulation. Then if you go back, it's just based on a fear. And the grace you always talk about, allow people their journey. And some people's journey is to fail, and that's okay. That's like with no judgment. That's one thing I love about the recovery program. Like with no judgment, you come here. We don't shoot our wounded. I don't care what you did while you were out there. Like, let us help. And mostly because it's selfish, like I'm helping you because it makes
me
I stay sober and I feel better. But just allowing people enough room to do that. But anger can be a good thing, It can motivate you to make better choices, and it can motivate you to look for a different solution. And when you were talking about micromanaging, whether it's me with my kids or you with your employees or whatever, I take a lot of the power away from them. And that's really like horrible on people, because then they have no self-esteem. They don't believe in the choices they're making are going to be right. And they start tiptoeing around and being unsure of themselves. And then you just feel kind of worthless. Like, well, if you're going to decide everything for me, what's my point, And a lot of times, the worst times in my life, the biggest train wrecks I've ever experienced have ended up to be catalysts for the most beautiful experience, where it's like, I know at the end of this, I'm going to be a better person and I'm going to understand myself better. It's just in the middle of it, I really want to like start fires and, slash tires, responsible, emotionally mature answers.
Yeah. Oh.
So I think that when it, like, even the way that we respond, like my biggest competition, right? Like, cause that's really my thing. Cause I've thought about like playing through the scenarios. Like if I ever, like, for some reason become really successful in business, where maybe I create a product and I start a tech company along with, continuously running, like, let's just say the end goal is I become really successful and rich and all that stuff. Like I've thought this through to the point where it's like, I've never done it. I'm not doing, like, deep down, my ego is not doing it because I want to sit on a beach that I own. My ego is doing it because I'm extremely competitive, right? And the crappy thing about being competitive is that no matter where you turn or where you look, someone's always doing better, right? And so you're just constantly in this super competitive manner looking around at everybody and comparing the way that you feel or the way that your organization is to the way that they look, right? Mm-hmm. And if they look happy, right, they must, like, it really just drives into you that you must be doing something wrong, right? And so I still have a great mentor, Tom McDougall at High Point, and he told me, stop looking at the sales dashboard. Stop looking at the dashboard of life, right? And doing comparisons with everyone around you. Like, are you selling more? Are you doing more? Are you whatever? And look at who you were yesterday, right? And compete with who you were yesterday. Were you good in everything that you tried to do yesterday? If the answer is no, then your competition is that today, right? That way, there's a continuous there's a constant that you're competing with, and it's yourself, and it's a lot more in line with what you can accomplish than trying to compete with like every single person you come in contact with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and so we're gonna take just a quick little radio commercial break and just shout out some of our underwriters that are helping put on this amazing programming here at KRFF 95.9. It's being underwritten today by Orange Records. Orange Records offers a variety of new and used music on vinyl and CD, as well as large selection of posters, DVDs, and much more. Orange Records buys used vinyl, CDs, and cassettes. They are located at 641 First Avenue North, right here in downtown Fargo, and they're open noon to 6:30 from Monday through Saturday. And for Adam, they're closed on Sundays. Search Orange Records Fargo on Facebook for updates on new arrivals as well as their special events. So there's a question that kind of came in through the chat that I wanted to tackle. And if, Kirsten, I want to throw it over to you because you might be able to share a little bit different perspective and something interesting. So the question comes from Amy, and she says, what if you are right? What if you are right, though, and are continuously pushed? How do we handle that? Like, keep pushing my buttons, but I know in my whole heart that I am right. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense because I too am right most of the time. No, I'm kidding. I'm willing to be wrong, and I think a lot of times I did women's group therapy for many years, and one of my favorite things I always heard was like, you know, the sassy past girls that would be like, I just tell it like it is, you know, and I would say, well, you tell it like you see it, you know, and that's not always like it is for everyone. And a lot of the times I am, maybe it's right for me, but I have to be willing to hear the other person's side of that, because if it's causing me any anger or like frustration, there's way more to it than me just being right, because I can be right, but the right answer for somebody else might be completely different. And what's making me mad is that they won't do what I said. And that's out of my hands. Like the serenity prayer, the things we can change and the things we cannot change. I can sure add my opinion to a conversation and just say, in my experience, this is how I think it should go. But if that is disregarded and they do it a different way, that's got nothing to do with me. And so that goes back to me and my recovery. And am I willing to be wrong? Am I willing to, be apologetic? Am I willing to hear what someone else has to say and see it through their eyes maybe? And am I willing to just swallow it sometimes and help do it their way? You know, like if my kids want to bake a cake and start with smashing eggs instead of, stirring the butter, which I think is important, then we just do it that way. And we might come to the exact same cookie at the end. I know mine would have tasted better, but am I willing to just do it a different way so that, because there are different ways. And truthfully, at the end of most of those situations, I learned that, like, maybe I wasn't all the way right. Maybe there's two different roads to the same place. And anyway, that's what I think. But anytime I feel anything in my gut where I'm frustrated, it's my stuff. It's my stuff. I got to start looking at that stuff.
So I was this morning when I was having breakfast, I jumped on TikTok, and there's a movie out that I want to. Here's the greatest thing that ever happened to TikTok is that they reproduce like little clips of movies all the time on there, and it makes me want to watch the movies. So it's like been the greatest marketing for like trailers and movies, for like old movies too. But there's one out about Jesse Owens, and I think he had just got to, at least from the video or whatever, he went to college, or he's trying to make the Olympic team. I don't know the name of the movie. I'm sure somebody can comment it, but he's training. And at the school, the football team is calling him a bunch of racial slurs, and they're yelling at him. And he's just trying to run, right? He's just trying to be on the track and run. And he keeps looking over at the football team. So when they're in the locker room, the white coach says, he walks up, he's like, Jesse, what was the deal with the football team? And he started, he's like, well, they were calling me names and this and that. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Right? He's like, and you could see that Jesse was confused. He was like, they're calling me, the N-word, and they're yelling at me, and I can't run while these people are yelling at me. And the whole point of it was the coach was like, you got to tune it out. You have to tune it out. You have to tune out the negativity and all the crowd and everyone. And like the lesson in life is that like, even in life, I'm, between work and what I'm trying to accomplish, raise my kids, or, there's been negativity of emails sent to us and social media and little one-off comments that people say when we're on a panel together at a conference or whatever. And I used to just get so obsessed, right? I was kind of like Jesse, standing on that track, looking at the football team and everything negative, and it had nothing to do with the race, right? It had nothing to do, and it's kind of like that's been my journey with anger and with character defects or what other people's actions, right? I'm just traveling this journey, right? And as long as I stay on the path and I don't get swayed to look to the side and participate in whatever is on the side in the ditch, right? I tend to be happy as long as I stay on that road. So the goal for me has been, there's an empowerment course that Twin Cities Rise does. And by the way, I'm meeting the founder of Twin Cities Rise today in about an hour, which is super cool. He wrote this curriculum about weak mode and power mode, right? And so am I making decisions in my weak mode, right, which is like fear and anger and trauma or whatever, or am I making decisions in my power mode, which is confidence and successful and, all that stuff? And usually what happens for a weak mode is something triggered it, and then I start getting really morbid about my life, and then I'm making decisions while I'm in that worldview, right? In that video, Jesse was getting pushed into that weak mode, and that's why he couldn't race. It had nothing to do with what those guys were doing. It had to do with how he was responding to it, right? He was paying attention to it. And so for me, I constantly have to ask myself, am I being weak or am I in power mode, right? Because when I'm in power mode, it doesn't matter what anybody around me does.
Right. And so I think with about the remaining 9 minutes or so, we'll kind of tackle this last piece that we've kind of been doing for this month. And for those who are just tuning in, this is the F5 Project. This is the F5 Recovery Radio here on KRFF 95.9. So Kirsten, can you share a few things about just some of your different responses that you've been having about anger management? What are some, either you can tackle like what Adam's saying about response, but what are some of your other tools that you have found to be effective? Because we always want to be able to give people tools that they can have to be able to hopefully improve their lives, whether they're in recovery or not. What are some tools that you've used to hopefully improve, how you manage your anger?
There's a lot of things that you can do. Of course, there's the whole like cheesy count to 10, walk away, you know what I mean? Punch something, not a wall, because then you got to learn how to do sheetrock. But if a lot of times it's, especially in recovery, anything that sits in my head, anytime I have a resentment, which is just to refeel a situation, is like, it's a luxury that I can't afford to have. Because it pushes me back to chemicals or some unhealthy thing, whether it's self-pity or whatever. I never have been in a dark spot and thought, I'm going to go jogging. That was never a solution. It's like either I'm going to smoke or I'm going to, whatever. Anyway, but a lot of times just saying it out loud, a close friend of mine, David, is staying with us temporarily, and a lot of times I'll just walk downstairs and say, like, I just got to say this out loud and get it out of my head, or it's going to turn into something that is way too big and ridiculous, And so a lot of times just saying it out loud takes the power out of it. Because anything, I'm a big believer in energy, and where you put your energy, that's what grows. And I strongly believe that you create what you fear. If you put enough energy into the things that you fear, then that will show up for you, because that you've just kind of asked for it, really asked to see it or whatever. And an example of that would be like if I, sometimes I wake up from a dream in which Matt cheated on me, and then I ignore him for that day, and he's like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like, well, you need to get me flowers or something, because, this was bad. Anyway, but if I'm afraid of being alone and I'm afraid that he's going to find somebody else, and I am constantly on him about it, like, who are you with? Where were you? What are you doing? I'm pushing him away. I'm creating what I fear, because eventually he's just like, this is too much work. I'm going to, find Double D Debbie or whatever, and then I'm going to burn all of his stuff, and then that's how that's going to go. But having a sponsor, having people in recovery meetings, just talking at meetings, be willing to be uncomfortable, be willing to get out of your own way, be willing to fail, be willing to say you're sorry and look at a different perspective, do your fourth and fifth step, all of those things. Those are all healthy things. And then just practice, because it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to have moments where I still like spout off to my kids or my husband or whomever. And then if I'm willing to learn from that and come back and apologize and work through that, I think those have been the biggest helps for me anyway. But I'm not nearly as hot-headed as you guys. So what do you do?
I think my big one is what at least has definitely helped recently is just being quicker to say I'm sorry or apologizing. It doesn't always diffuse my anger. It doesn't diffuse maybe how I'm feeling in that moment, but at least it helps start the process. And I've had to do it with my boss, with my coworkers, and just different situations. Like there's just been moments where I'm like, man, I just reacted really poorly, and that's not me.
Yeah.
And then it's saying, hey, I'm sorry for reacting that way, and trying to and doing better about being sincere about it. Because I used to just spout sorries all the time because that was what you do. You're making amends. I'm sorry. Just, finger gunning people. Just being like just throwing out sorries like they're candy, but putting more sincerity behind it to say, hey, you know what, that wasn't appropriate. That wasn't okay. That wasn't whatever it is. Saying exactly what went wrong, and then saying I'm sorry. So that way, hopefully, I can fix it or learn or be able to to put myself not down, but just kind of just relax myself or just get out of that angry moment, because it's really hard to be sorry and be angry.
Yeah.
Like it's difficult to be in this place of like, okay, I did something wrong, but I'm still angry about it, but I'm I'm taking fault, I'm taking ownership, and whatever portion or whatever piece of that was my responsibility, just taking ownership for that. Even if it's my 60 and they're 40, I'd rather be mad about their 40 than my 60.
Yeah.
But at least being able to say, hey, I'm sorry for my 60. Whether they respond in the same way, hey, I'm sorry for my part, because, weirdly enough, in marriage, you don't always get the sorry or the response back that you sometimes want. But it's like, that's okay. I'm still going to do this because I still need to do this for me.
For you.
I still need to be able to do that.
And to have that living amends with it. Like a sorry means nothing unless you actually change your behavior.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. And Adam, so want to tackle that one before we go?
Well, I think I guess we got a couple minutes left. Anger, man, it's intoxicating. It really is, because it's out of all the things, that we have to deal with when it comes to fear or anxiety or anger or whatever. Like anger and resentment is probably the most intoxicating of all of them, right? Where it's probably the one thing that I deal with more, that I have troubles with, because it triggers feelings associated with it. And and a lot of times it isn't so much that I can't deal with what's going on in front of me. It's really hard for me to deal with the feelings associated with the event, right? If I didn't, many times I thought to myself, if I was just a sociopath, I could probably be pretty good at life, right? Because if I didn't have to feel the intense feelings of anger or fear or depression or whatever, it wouldn't be as crippling to me, and I would be able to continue to function. So the goal has always been or what it's turned into be is like, how can I deal with the feelings associated with the events in front of me? Right? Instead of going down like, is this power mode? Is this weak mode? Is this triggering something, and having to process it? Like, it takes a lot of work. And sometimes I wish it was just like, you know what? I'm angry. Not a big deal. Move forward. But in the heat of the moment, it's really hard to even think, right? Because all you do is think negative thoughts of like, this person doesn't respect me. This person doesn't understand how much work I put into something. This person doesn't see me or value me or whatever. Like, it just goes into this not real world of thoughts, and then it's associated with the feelings in your gut that is like, feels like it's on fire. It's really hard to make a decision. So that's why I think a lot of times, Laura said it earlier in the comments, I have to remember first thought wrong. I have to remember that, because I rarely have a good, productive thought in the midst of anger right away. It takes time, and it takes time to de-escalate for me to get back to being focused on the task at hand. So separate yourself. Remember that they're just feelings, and does it have anything to do with the journey? I think if you can stick in those 3 areas, you can usually get through it quicker, and you can get to what you're after a lot faster.
For sure. Well, thank you all so much for coming and tuning in on the radio and on Facebook Live. This is One Pretty Ricky, joined by co-hosts Kirsten Huovinen and Adam Martin. This is the F5 Recovery Radio. Please tune in with us next week as we discuss another topic in recovery. This is F5 Recovery Radio, and we'll be back with more.